The neon sign above the Howling Moon Tavern flickered with the enthusiasm of a dying firefly, casting intermittent shadows across the frost-kissed window panes. Inside, the air hung thick with the scent of aged whiskey, burning cedar from the massive stone fireplace, and something else, something primal that Aurora couldn't quite name but felt crawling up her spine like a spider made of electricity. She shouldn't have come here. Thank you for sticking around with me, my wonderful story family. If you're already hooked in for today's story and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from because, tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And please like the video so it will feed the algorithm. Now let us begin. That thought repeated itself in her mind like a broken record, scratching against the vinyl of her better judgment. But her best friends, Mia and Jade, had insisted. It's your 25th birthday, they'd argued with the tenacity of lawyers presenting their closing arguments. You can't spend it alone in your apartment eating cold pizza and watching true crime documentaries. Aurora had countered that cold pizza was perfectly acceptable birthday food and that true crime documentaries were educational. She'd lost that argument spectacularly. Now she sat in a corner booth, nursing her third vodka cranberry like it was a wounded bird she was trying to nurse back to health. The drink was too strong, the music too loud, and the crowd too strange. Everyone in this bar looked like they'd stepped out of a casting call for ruggedly attractive people with secrets. The men were built like they'd been chiseled from granite by a sculptor with very specific preferences, and the women moved with a predatory grace that made Aurora feel like a baby giraffe learning to walk. You're staring again, Mia whispered, her cherry-red lips curling into an amused smirk. She was the kind of beautiful that made Aurora question whether they'd actually emerged from the same species. With her dark hair cascading over her shoulders like a waterfall of midnight silk and her green eyes that seemed to know everyone's secrets, Mia could have been intimidating. But she was also the same woman who'd ugly cried during a commercial about shelter dogs last week, so Aurora kept her ego somewhat intact. I'm not staring. I'm observing, Aurora corrected, taking another sip of her drink. There's a difference. Staring is rude. Observing is scientific. And what has the great scientist Aurora discovered in her observations? Jade chimed in, her words slightly slurred from the 5 shots she'd consumed since they arrived. Jade was a petite powerhouse with fire-engine red hair and freckles that multiplied when she was excited. Right now, her face looked like someone had splashed cinnamon across her cheeks. Aurora leaned back, the worn leather of the booth creaking beneath her. That this bar is weird. Everyone looks like they're in on some joke that we're not getting. And have you noticed how quiet it gets whenever someone new walks in? Like everyone's sniffing them out? Mia and Jade exchanged a look that Aurora didn't miss. It was quick, barely a flicker, but it was there, that silent communication between two people who shared a secret. Aurora had noticed these looks more frequently lately, and each one added another brick to the wall of questions building in her mind. You're being paranoid, Mia said smoothly, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. It's just a local bar. These people probably all know each other. Small-town vibes, even in the city. Aurora wanted to argue that this bar was on the outskirts of town, deep in the forest, accessible only by a winding road that her GPS had repeatedly told her didn't exist. She wanted to ask why Mia and Jade had been so insistent on coming to this specific establishment when there were perfectly good bars within walking distance of her apartment. But the vodka was making her tongue heavy and her suspicions seemed silly. Fine, she conceded, swirling the ice in her glass. But if I get murdered tonight, I want both of you to know that I'm coming back as a ghost specifically to haunt your bathrooms. You'll never have a peaceful shower again. Noted, Jade giggled, her eyes suddenly lighting up with the kind of mischief that had gotten Aurora into trouble countless times throughout their 15-year friendship. Speaking of things that might get you murdered. No. Aurora said immediately. You don't even know what I was going to say. I don't need to. That look on your face is the same look you had right before you convinced me to sneak into Mr. Henderson's pool when we were 16. I still have the scar from climbing that fence. Jade waved dismissively. That was years ago. I've matured. Last month you convinced me to try that ghost pepper eating challenge. I couldn't taste anything for 3 days. Character building, Jade said without an ounce of remorse. But this is different. This is a birthday dare. Aurora felt her stomach drop to her shoes. A birthday dare. It's tradition. Mia jumped in, clearly in on whatever scheme was brewing. Every year, the birthday girl gets dared to do something brave. Something bold. Since when is this tradition? Since right now. We're creating traditions. We're millennials, it's what we do. Aurora looked between her two best friends, reading the determination in their faces like a book she'd rather return to the library. What's the dare? Jade leaned in, her whiskey-laced breath warm against Aurora's ear. See that man at the bar? The one in the back corner? Aurora's gaze traveled across the crowded room, past the dancing couples and the rowdy groups, past the bartender who looked like he could bench press a small car, until her eyes landed on him. Her breath caught in her throat like a bird hitting a window. He sat alone, which seemed almost criminal given the packed nature of the establishment. But as Aurora studied him, she understood why. There was a bubble around him, an invisible force field that kept everyone at least 3 feet away. It wasn't that people were afraid of him, although they absolutely should be, it was something more fundamental. It was like getting too close would be dangerous. Like approaching a sleeping lion and hoping it stayed asleep. He was massive, even sitting down. Broad shoulders strained against a black leather jacket that had probably never committed a single fashion crime. His hair was dark, the color of coffee before cream, and swept back from a face that belonged on a coin or a wanted poster. Probably both. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, and lips that looked soft despite the hardness of everything else. But it was his eyes that made Aurora's blood run cold and hot simultaneously. They were watching the crowd with the lazy patience of a predator who knew his prey couldn't escape. Golden. His eyes were actually golden, catching the firelight and throwing it back like polished amber. You want me to do what, exactly? Aurora's voice came out steadier than she felt, which was a minor miracle. Jade grinned like the Cheshire Cat's chaotic cousin. Kiss him. Excuse me? You heard me. Walk up to the scariest man in this bar and plant one on him. Full kiss. No pecks on the cheek, no air kisses. A real, genuine, my grandmother would clutch her pearls kiss. Aurora laughed, but it came out brittle and hollow. That's not a dare, that's a suicide mission. Look at him, Jade. He looks like he eats women like me for breakfast. And not in the fun way. You think there's a fun way to be eaten for breakfast? Mia asked with exaggerated innocence. You know what I mean. Aurora's cheeks flushed, the heat spreading down her neck. I can't just walk up to a stranger and kiss him. What if he's married? What if he's dangerous? What if he's a serial killer who specifically targets brunettes with poor decision-making skills? Then at least you'll die doing something exciting for once, Jade said cheerfully. Come on, Rory. When was the last time you did something spontaneous? Something wild? You spend every weekend at home reading. Your idea of taking a risk is trying a new flavor of tea. The words stung because they were true. Aurora had built her life on safety, on predictability. After her parents died in that accident 8 years ago, she'd wrapped herself in routine like a protective blanket. Wake up, go to work at the bookshop, come home, read, sleep, repeat. She'd convinced herself that she was content, that peace was the same thing as happiness. But lately, there was a restlessness inside her that no amount of chamomile tea or cozy mysteries could quiet. She looked at the man again. He hadn't moved, hadn't spoken to anyone, hadn't done anything except sit there and radiate danger like a nuclear reactor in human form. And yet, she couldn't look away. There was something about him that called to something deep inside her, a recognition that made no sense but felt more real than anything had in years. If I die, she said slowly, I'm changing my will to leave you both nothing. Joke's on you, you don't have anything worth inheriting, Jade shot back. Besides my grandmother's antique lamp, and Mia already called dibs on that. I did, Mia confirmed. It would really tie my living room together. Aurora drained the rest of her drink in one long swallow, feeling the alcohol burn a path down her throat and settle into her empty stomach like liquid fire. Courage. That's what she needed. Liquid courage and a complete disconnect from common sense. She stood up before she could talk herself out of it, smoothing down her little black dress, the one Jade had shoved her into earlier with claims that it made her look like a sexy librarian, which is apparently a whole thing now. Her legs felt wobbly, though whether from the alcohol or pure terror, she couldn't tell. Any last advice? She asked, not turning around. Don't die, Mia offered helpfully. Use tongue, Jade added. Aurora didn't dignify either suggestion with a response. Instead, she began walking, her heels clicking against the worn wooden floor like a countdown timer. With each step, her heart beat faster. With each step, that man at the bar seemed to grow larger, more imposing, more impossibly beautiful in the way that forest fires were beautiful, devastating and deadly. She was halfway across the room when she realized that people were staring. Not just glancing, actually staring, with expressions ranging from shock to amusement to what looked disturbingly like pity. Someone actually gasped. Like she was walking toward a guillotine instead of a stranger in a bar. The man still hadn't looked at her. He was focused on his drink, something dark and smoky in a crystal glass, his attention seemingly consumed by the amber liquid. But Aurora could feel his awareness of her. Could sense his focus shifting, sharpening, even as his eyes remained fixed elsewhere. 3 feet away now. She could smell him, pine and sandalwood and something wild, like snow and wind and running through forests in the dead of night. It wasn't cologne. It was too natural for that, too inherent. It was the smell of him, his essence, and it made her mouth water in a way that was entirely inappropriate for a public setting. 2 feet. 1 foot. She stopped right beside him, close enough to touch. Close enough to see the faint scars on his knuckles and the silver ring on his right hand, bearing a symbol she didn't recognize, a wolf, mid-hell, surrounded by a crown of thorns. He still didn't look at her. Excuse me, she said, and her voice sounded foreign to her own ears, breathy and bold simultaneously. I'm about to do something incredibly stupid, and I feel like you should have some warning. Now he looked. And when those golden eyes met hers, Aurora felt the world tilt on its axis. Something clicked into place deep within her chest, like a key turning in a lock she hadn't known existed. His pupils dilated, and for just a moment, a fraction of a second, he looked as stunned as she felt. Then his expression shuddered, becoming unreadable and cold as a winter midnight. And what, he asked, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her bones like distant thunder. Would that be? Aurora didn't answer with words. Instead, she grabbed the collar of his jacket, pulled herself up onto her tiptoes, and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was meant to be quick. A peck. A brush of mouths that would satisfy the dare and let her escape with her dignity, and presumably her life, intact. But the moment their lips touched, quick became impossible. He tasted like whiskey and winter, like something ancient and forbidden. His lips were softer than they looked, but his response was anything but soft. One moment, she was the one initiating, the next, his hand was in her hair, tilting her head, taking control of the kiss with an authority that left no room for argument. His other hand found her waist, fingers spreading across her lower back like brands of heat. Aurora forgot about the dare. Forgot about her friends, the watching crowd, her own name. There was only him, his taste, his touch, the sound he made deep in his throat that was half growl and half something else she couldn't name. When they finally broke apart, she was breathing hard, her lips swollen, her heart threatening to crack through her ribs. His eyes had darkened, the gold burning like embers at the center of an inferno. "Well," he said, his voice somehow even deeper than before, roughened and raw. "That was unexpected." Aurora opened her mouth to respond, to apologize, to explain, to say something witty that would salvage the situation, but she never got the chance. Because at that exact moment, every single person in the bar dropped to their knees. And a man near the door spoke words that echoed through the sudden silence like a death sentence. "All hail Eric Blackthorne, Alpha King of the Northern Pack." Aurora looked at the stranger she'd just kissed, really looked, and watched as a slow, dangerous smile spread across his devastatingly handsome face. "I believe," he murmured, for her ears alone, "we have much to discuss, mate." Chapter 2, When Your Birthday Dare Becomes an International Incident. Aurora had made many poor decisions in her 25 years of existence. There was the time she'd tried to cut her own bangs at 2 in the morning, resulting in what could only be described as asymmetrical chaos. There was the incident at her high school prom where she'd stepped on her date's foot so hard during a slow dance that he'd limped for a week. And who could forget the great sourdough starter disaster of 2022, which had culminated in something that may or may not have achieved sentience before she'd thrown it out. But kissing the Alpha King of the Northern Pack? That one might actually take the crown for most spectacularly terrible decision in the history of Aurora Thompson's life. "Mate," she repeated, her voice emerging as something between a squeak and a wheeze. "Did you just call me mate? Like Australian mate? Or not Australian?" His golden eyes hadn't left her face, and that dangerous smile hadn't faltered. If anything, it deepened, carving lines of dark amusement into his sculptured features. "The other kind." "The other kind," she echoed stupidly, her brain apparently having decided that now, of all moments, was the perfect time to go on vacation. "And what exactly is the other kind?" "Eric Blackthorne." Because apparently she'd kissed royalty, supernatural royalty, which was definitely not covered in any etiquette books she'd ever read, tilted his head slightly. The movement was subtle but distinctly inhuman, predatory in a way that made the fine hairs on her arms stand at attention. "The kind that involves you and me," he said slowly, as if explaining basic mathematics to a particularly dense student, "bound together for eternity. The kind where my wolf recognized your soul the moment you touched me. The kind that means you're now, technically speaking, the queen of the Northern Pack." The room was still kneeling. Every single person, including, she noticed with mounting horror, her two best friends, remained with their heads bowed. The only sounds were the crackling of the fireplace and the thundering of her own heartbeat. "I'm sorry, did you say wolf? Were you under the impression that the Howling Moon Tavern was for regular humans?" "I was under the impression that wolves were animals that belonged in nature documentaries, not bars." His laugh was unexpected, a rich, dark sound that rolled through the room and did something unmentionable to her stomach. You're either incredibly brave or spectacularly naive. I haven't decided which yet. Can I vote for spectacularly lost? Aurora managed. Because I'm pretty sure I took a wrong turn somewhere. Possibly at birth. She tried to step back, to create some distance between herself and this impossible man, but his hand was still on her waist. His grip wasn't painful, wasn't even particularly tight, but she got the distinct impression that escape was not currently on the menu. You're handling this remarkably well, he observed, studying her face with an intensity that made her want to squirm. Most humans, upon learning about our existence, tend to faint. Or scream. Or attempt to run, which is always inadvisable. I'm still processing, Aurora said. The screaming might come later. I'm building up to it. I look forward to it. She couldn't tell if he was being sarcastic. His face gave nothing away, but there was a warmth in his eyes that seemed genuine, if warmth could also look like it wanted to devour you whole. A movement caught her attention, and she turned to see Mia and Jade being escorted toward them by two burly men who looked like they bench-pressed trees for fun. Unlike the rest of the room's occupants, her friends weren't kneeling. They walked upright, though their expressions suggested they would very much like to sink through the floor. Aurora, Mia began, her voice carrying the specific cadence of someone trying to explain why the milk was empty when she'd definitely been the last one to use it. I can explain. Can you? Can you really? Aurora's voice pitched higher. Because I'm very interested in the explanation for why you brought me to a werewolf bar and dared me to kiss the werewolf king. Alpha King, Jade corrected weakly. It's a different thing. I don't care about the nomenclature, Jade. In her defense, Eric interjected calmly, as if he dealt with hysterical humans discovering the supernatural every Tuesday. They had no idea I would be here tonight. I wasn't supposed to be. My presence was unexpected, even to my own people. Aurora whirled back to face him, grateful for a target for her rising panic. Oh, wonderful. So this was all just a spectacular cosmic accident? The universe just decided, you know what Aurora needs for her birthday? An existential crisis and an immortal husband. I never said immortal. Are you immortal? He paused, considering. Long-lived. Very long-lived. The oldest among us has seen perhaps 8 centuries. 8 centuries, she repeated, her voice gone flat. That's fine. That's completely fine. I'm having a normal birthday. She could feel the edges of hysteria licking at her consciousness, threatening to pull her under. This wasn't real. Couldn't be real. She was dreaming, or drugged, or suffering from some kind of stress-induced psychotic break. Any moment now, she'd wake up in her bed, surrounded by her 17 throw pillows and her cat Mr. Darcy, and this would all be a bizarre memory. But the hand on her waist was warm and solid. The air still carried that wild, pine-and-snow scent. And the taste of him lingered on her lips like a brand. Perhaps, Eric said, and his voice had gentled somewhat, we should continue this conversation somewhere more private. You have questions, and I have explanations that would better be given without an audience. Aurora glanced around the still kneeling room. Why are they still doing that? Because I haven't dismissed them. You can dismiss them. Please dismiss them. It's extremely weird. Another flash of that dark amusement. Rise, he commanded, and the single word carried an authority that Aurora felt in her bones. Everyone stood simultaneously, moving with eerie synchronization. Freaky, she whispered. You'll get used to it. I highly doubt that. He finally released her waist but immediately captured her hand instead. His palm was rough with calluses, his grip warm but inescapable. Come. We have much to discuss, and I suspect you'll be more receptive after you've had time to process. Where are you taking me? My home. The Pack compound, about 30 miles north of here. I'm not going to a strange werewolf's house. I just met you. We're mates. It's hardly strange. It's extremely strange. He paused, and something shifted in his expression. For a moment, beneath the arrogance and the power and the predatory intensity, Aurora glimpsed something almost uncertain. Almost human. "I understand this is overwhelming," he said, and his voice had lost some of its commanding edge. "I've had centuries to learn about mate bonds, to prepare for the possibility. You've had approximately 4 minutes. That's not fair to you." Aurora blinked. It was, possibly, the most reasonable thing he'd said since this whole disaster began. "If you come with me tonight," he continued, "I give you my word that no harm will come to you. You will have your own room, your privacy will be respected, and in the morning, if you wish to leave, I will personally drive you back to the city." "And if I don't want to go with you at all?" His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Then I will let you walk away. But the bond between us won't disappear simply because you pretend it doesn't exist. You'll feel it, a pull, an ache, a sense of incompleteness that nothing else can fill. And eventually, whether you want to or not, you'll come looking for me." "That sounds like a threat." "It's a promise. And a warning." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent sparks racing up her arm. "Choose willingly, Aurora. Come with me and learn what you are to me, what we are to each other. Or leave and spend the rest of your life wondering." She should leave. Every rational brain cell she possessed, and there were plenty. She'd graduated summa cum laude, "Thank you very much," screamed at her to run. This man was a stranger, a literal monster from folklore, and she had absolutely no business entertaining whatever insanity he was proposing. But there was that pull he'd mentioned. That sense of rightness she'd felt the moment their lips touched. And deeper still, a curiosity that had always been her greatest strength and most dangerous weakness. "If I come," she said slowly, "my friends come too." Eric's eyes flickered to Mia and Jade, who were watching the exchange with expressions of mingled hope and terror. "The 2 wolves who lured you here under false pretenses? You want them with you?" "The 2 what?" Mia winced. Jade suddenly found the ceiling fascinating. "Your friends," Eric said, and now there was definitely amusement in his voice, "are wolves. Pack members. They've been keeping an eye on you for years, waiting to see if you'd trigger the transition." Aurora stared at her best friends, her sisters in all but blood, and felt something inside her crack. "Years," she whispered. "You've been lying to me for years?" "We wanted to tell you," Mia said desperately. "But you were already dealing with so much after your parents, and then you seemed so happy in your normal life, and we thought." "You thought what?" "That I couldn't handle the truth? That I was too fragile? That it would be better to let you have a normal life for as long as possible," Jade finished quietly. "Before everything changed." "Before what changed? What else are you keeping from me?" The silence that followed was damning in its totality. Eric stepped closer, positioning himself slightly in front of her in what Aurora recognized, with a small jolt of surprise, as a protective gesture. "What are you hiding?" he asked the 2 women, and his voice had gone cold again. "Commanding and dangerous." Mia's face had gone pale. Her parents, they weren't human, Alpha. They were wolves. Members of the Eastern Pack. And their death wasn't an accident. The world tilted again, and Aurora was suddenly grateful for Eric's solid presence beside her. His hand found the small of her back, steadying her. "What are you talking about?" Her voice came out thin, reedy. "My parents died in a car crash. There was a report. There was a funeral. I saw them buried." "You saw empty caskets," Jade said, and she was crying now, tears tracking through her freckles. "The bodies were never recovered, Aurora. They couldn't be, because there was no car crash. Your parents were murdered by hunters, humans who know about our existence and want to eliminate us. They were coming to find you, to tell you the truth about what you are, and they were killed before they could reach you." "What I am," Aurora repeated numbly. "And what exactly am I?" Mia's answer seemed to echo from a great distance, "You're like us, Aurora. You're a wolf. And according to pack law, as the child of murdered wolves who never received justice, you have every right to claim blood vengeance against those who killed them." Eric's grip on her tightened. "Well," he murmured, and there was something dark and pleased in his tone, "this just got significantly more interesting." Aurora looked between her apparently supernatural best friends, her allegedly fated mate, and the crowd of werewolves watching her with expressions ranging from curiosity to concern. "I want that drink now," she said faintly. "I want all the drinks. I want to become a drink." "That," Eric said, steering her toward the door, "can be arranged. But first, we need to get you somewhere safe. If what your friends say is true, if hunters murdered the wolves of the Eastern Pack, then you're in danger. They'll be watching for any surviving bloodline. This is insane." "Yes. You're all insane." "Possibly. I'm insane for even entertaining this." "Almost certainly." He opened the door, revealing a night sky brilliant with stars and a fleet of black vehicles idling in the gravel parking lot. "But insane or not, you're my mate. And I protect what's mine. I'm not yours." He looked at her then, really looked. And in his golden eyes, she saw centuries of loneliness, of waiting, of a hope he'd probably told himself was foolish. "Not yet," he agreed softly. "But you will be." And despite everything, the lies, the danger, the complete and utter destruction of everything she'd believed about her life, Aurora felt a spark of something ignite in her chest. Something that felt dangerously like anticipation. Chapter 3, Revelations, Running, and Really Terrible Timing. The Pack compound wasn't what Aurora had expected. In her admittedly limited imagination, she'd pictured something like a medieval fortress, all stone walls and flickering torches and dungeons where enemies were kept. What she got instead was something more closely resembling a luxury resort designed by someone with a very specific wilderness aesthetic. A massive lodge sprawled across the hilltop, all exposed timber beams and floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the moonlight like liquid silver. Around it, smaller cabins dotted the landscape, connected by stone pathways lit with soft, amber lamps. Smoke curled from various chimneys, carrying the scent of burning oak and something richer, something that made Aurora's stomach growl despite her emotional turmoil. "You're hungry," Eric observed, leading her up the front steps. He said it like it was surprising, like hunger was a specifically human weakness he'd forgotten about. "When did you last eat?" "I don't know. Lunch, maybe?" Jade was supposed to take me to dinner but apparently decided that supernatural revelations were more important than pasta. "I'll have food brought to your room." "I don't have a room here." "You do now." He pushed open the front doors, massive wooden things carved with wolves running through forests. And the interior warmth enveloped Aurora like a blanket. "Third floor, east wing. It has a private bathroom, a view of the forest, and, most importantly, a lock that works from the inside." Aurora stopped walking, forcing him to stop too. "Why would you give me a room with a lock I control?" "Because I told you your privacy would be respected." He met her eyes, and once again, she glimpsed that vulnerability beneath the power. "I know what this looks like. I know what I look like, what this place looks like, what this situation looks like. I'm asking you to trust me despite overwhelming evidence that you shouldn't. The least I can do is give you a door you can close." It was such a small thing. Such a simple gesture. But after hours of having every certainty she'd ever known ripped away from her, it meant more than Aurora could articulate. "Thank you," she said quietly. Something softened in his expression. "You're welcome." The lodge's interior was as impressive as its exterior, high ceilings, warm lighting, and furniture that looked like it had been handcrafted by artisans who actually understood comfort. Pack members moved through the spaces with the ease of family, nodding respectfully to Eric as he passed but shooting Aurora curious glances that ranged from welcoming to suspicious. She was led up a grand staircase, down a hall lined with portraits of stern-looking wolves, both human and animal form, which was fascinating and terrifying in equal measure, and finally to a door that looked identical to all the others but somehow felt different. "This is you," Eric said, pushing the door open to reveal a room that looked like it had been ripped from a design magazine. A massive bed dominated the space, covered in furs and quilts in shades of cream and gold. A fireplace crackled in the corner, and through the windows, those magnificent floor-to-ceiling windows, Aurora could see the forest stretching endlessly under the starlight. "It's beautiful," she admitted. "I had it prepared when I knew I was coming tonight." He paused, and something flickered across his face, embarrassment, maybe, or vulnerability. My wolf, he knew something was going to happen. Something important. I didn't know what, but I wanted to be ready. "Your wolf is a separate entity?" "He's me, and I'm him. But yes, in some ways, he's his own presence. He has instincts I don't always understand, desires I can't always control." His jaw tightened. "He's been restless lately. For years, actually. Searching for something. Someone." "Me?" "Apparently." The way he said it, like he was still adjusting to the reality, still processing the enormity of finding her, made Aurora feel something complicated. She was supposed to be the overwhelmed one here. She was the one whose entire life had been upended. But looking at Eric Blackthorne, Alpha King of the Northern Pack, she realized that maybe he wasn't as unshakable as he seemed. "I need answers," she said. "About my parents, about what I am, about all of it. Tonight. Tonight, you need to rest. You're running on adrenaline and alcohol, and you're about to crash. Trust me, I've seen it happen to humans who learn about our world. Their minds can only process so much before they shut down. I'm not human, apparently. You haven't gone through the transition yet. Until you do, your body operates like a human's. And right now, that human body is exhausted." As if on cue, a wave of fatigue washed over Aurora so intense that she swayed on her feet. Eric caught her elbow, his touch sending that familiar spark racing through her veins. "In the morning," he said gently, "I will answer every question you have. I will tell you about your parents, about the hunters, about what being a wolf means. And after that, if you still want to leave, I will take you myself. Promise?" "On my honor as Alpha." She didn't know what that meant, not really. But the solemnity in his voice, the weight of his words, they felt like a binding contract. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." He led her to the bed, and she collapsed onto it without even removing her shoes. The mattress was impossibly soft, the blankets impossibly warm, and within seconds, her eyes were drooping. The last thing she saw before sleep claimed her was Eric's silhouette in the doorway, watching her with those golden eyes, guarding her, she realized, even as she surrendered to darkness. Morning came too soon and too bright, sunlight streaming through the windows with aggressive cheerfulness. Aurora groaned, pulling a pillow over her face and hoping the universe would take the hint and let her return to the lovely dream she'd been having about a normal life where mythical creatures didn't exist. The universe declined. "Good morning, sunshine." Jade's voice preceded her entrance into the room, followed by the smell of coffee so strong that Aurora's survival instincts overrode her desire to hide. "Rise and shine. We have answers to give and trust to rebuild." Aurora sat up, squinting at her apparently supernatural best friend, who was carrying a tray laden with breakfast foods that looked genuinely amazing despite the whole lying for years thing. "I'm still furious at you," Aurora announced. "Understandable. That's why I brought pancakes. Chocolate chip, your favorite. Pancakes don't fix betrayal." "What about pancakes and bacon?" Aurora looked at the bacon. It was perfectly crispy. It was the exact right color. It was, she suspected, a peace offering specifically engineered to exploit her weaknesses. "Fine," she grumbled. "But this doesn't mean I forgive you. I'll take what I can get." Jade set the tray on the bed and settled cross-legged at the foot of it, her expression shifting from cheerful to serious with a speed that gave Aurora emotional whiplash. "Mia's meeting with the Alpha King right now. going over everything we know about your parents. I'm supposed to keep you company, but honestly? I'm here because I owe you the full truth, and I want to give it to you myself. Aurora picked up a piece of bacon, comfort food was required for this conversation, and nodded. Start talking. And Jade did. She told Aurora about the wolves of the Eastern Pack, a smaller, more isolated group that had kept to themselves for generations. About how Aurora's parents had been researchers, academics who studied human-wolf integration and believed that the species could coexist openly someday. About how that belief had made them enemies among both wolves who wanted to remain hidden and humans who wanted wolves extinct. They met while tracking the same legend, Jade explained, her voice soft with a reverence Aurora recognized from her own memories. Your mom was cataloging folklore in rural communities, and your dad was investigating reports of unusual animal behavior. They figured out the truth together, fell in love, and eventually transitioned. Your mom first, then your dad a year later. My parents were human? Originally? Half of all wolves start that way. The gene is dormant in some bloodlines, awakening only under specific circumstances. Trauma, intense emotion, contact with pack members, or finding your mate. Aurora thought about the spark she'd felt when kissing Eric. The sense of something awakening deep within her. I haven't transitioned, she said slowly, testing the words. Not yet. But you're close. I've been watching you for years, Aurora, watching the signs. Your senses are sharper than any human's. You've always had impossible luck with animals. And every full moon since you turned 24, you've had what you call restless nights. You pace, you can't sleep, you feel like something's crawling under your skin. Aurora's blood went cold. Those nights, she'd blamed them on stress, on insomnia, on too much coffee. She'd never once considered that they might be symptoms of something else entirely. When did you know? About me? Jade's eyes dropped. Your parents contacted our pack about a year before they died. They wanted protection for you, wanted us to watch over you in case anything happened to them. My grandmother made the arrangements, she was alpha then, and when your parents were killed, she sent me and Mia to find you. To protect you. To wait. Wait for what? For this. For your awakening. For the moment when you'd be strong enough to learn the truth and make your own choice about what to do with it. What choice? Jade's face hardened, the playful friend Aurora had known for 15 years suddenly replaced by something older, fiercer. The hunters who killed your parents, they're still out there. They're a faction called the Silver Dawn, and they've been operating in the shadows for centuries, killing wolves and anyone connected to them. Your parents weren't their first victims, and they won't be their last. You said I could claim blood vengeance. It's your birthright. As the surviving child of murdered wolves who died without justice, pack law allows you to hunt those responsible. To make them pay. Jade leaned forward. But it's dangerous, Aurora. The Silver Dawn isn't some ragtag group of conspiracy theorists. They're organized, funded, and ruthless. If you go after them, you'll be putting yourself in the crosshairs. And if I don't? Then you walk away. Build a normal life, stay far from pack politics, and let the past stay buried. She paused. That's what we hoped for, honestly. Mia and I. We thought if you never transitioned, never learned the truth, you could be happy without all of this. So the dare last night was supposed to help you loosen up. Maybe meet a nice wolf, feel that first spark, make the transition easier when it finally happened. We had no idea the Alpha King himself would be there. Jade laughed bitterly. Our great plan, completely derailed by the most powerful wolf on the continent deciding to get a drink at the same bar. Aurora processed this in silence, mechanically eating her pancakes and letting the information settle into her brain like sediment at the bottom of a river. Her parents had been wolves. Had been murdered. Her best friends had been lying to her to protect her. She was on the verge of becoming something supernatural, and she'd accidentally kissed and apparently bonded herself to werewolf royalty. I need to go for a walk, she said finally. Aurora. Alone, Jade. Please. Her friend's face crumpled, but she nodded. Just, don't leave the compound. It's protected here. Outside the borders. I won't leave. I just need to think. She left her breakfast half-finished and her room entirely behind, walking through the lodge's halls without any destination in mind. Pack members gave her a wide berth, whether out of respect or wariness she couldn't tell. She found a side door that led to a garden, herbs and flowers growing in organized rows, tended with obvious care, and walked until the voices of the lodge faded to silence. Only when she was completely alone, surrounded by nothing but plants and morning light, did she let herself cry. Her parents. Her wonderful, kind, bookish parents who had taught her to love stories and treat everyone with kindness. They hadn't died in an accident. They'd been murdered because of what they were, because they'd dared to believe in a future where wolves and humans could coexist. And their killers were still out there. Still free. Still hurting people. I thought I might find you here. She didn't startle at Eric's voice. Some part of her had felt him approaching, that bond between them thrumming like a plucked guitar string as he drew closer. I wanted to be alone. I know. That's why I waited 3 hours before coming to find you. He appeared beside her, impossibly silent for someone so large, and lowered himself to sit on the stone bench she'd claimed. The garden was my mother's. She said tending to growing things helped her think. Was? She died when I was young. Hunters, like yours. His jaw tightened. The Silver Dawn has been our enemy for generations. They've killed my mother, my father, 3 of my cousins. And every time we think we've eliminated them, they resurface with new members and new methods. So you understand what I'm feeling. Better than I wish I did. Aurora wiped her eyes, not caring if she looked weak or fragile. If Eric Blackthorne, Alpha King of the Northern Pack, couldn't handle tears, that was his problem. I want to find them, she said, and her voice came out steady despite everything. The hunters who killed my parents. I want to make them pay. I know. And I need your help. He turned to look at her fully, and in his golden eyes, she saw recognition. Understanding. A shared pain that connected them beyond any supernatural bond. You have it, he said simply. Whatever you need, Aurora. I will give it. Why? You barely know me. You're my mate. My wolf knows you on a level that transcends time and logic. And beyond that. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with a gentleness that contradicted everything about his dangerous appearance. Beyond that, I've seen what the Silver Dawn takes from people. I've lived with the hole they leave behind. If I can help you find closure, if I can help you find justice, then at least some good will come from all this pain. Aurora looked at this man, this alpha, this king, and felt that spark inside her grow into something warmer. Something that felt, impossibly, like hope. I don't know how to be a wolf, she admitted. I don't know how to fight or track or any of the things I'll need to survive this. Then I'll teach you. His smile was slow, dangerous, and somehow reassuring all at once. I've trained warriors for centuries. Teaching one stubborn human with a vendetta shouldn't be too difficult. I'm not stubborn. You kissed a stranger in a bar because your friends dared you. You're the most stubborn person I've ever met. She laughed despite herself, a broken, watery sound that caught in her throat. Fair point. Eric stood, offering her his hand. Come. It's time you met the pack properly. And after that, we start planning. The Silver Dawn has hidden in the shadows long enough. It's time to drag them into the light. Aurora took his hand, letting him pull her to her feet. Their fingers intertwined naturally, fitting together like puzzle pieces designed for each other. One more question, she said as they began walking back toward the lodge. Yes? This mate bond, does it mean I have to marry you? because I have to say, moving a little fast here. Eric's laugh echoed through the garden, rich and genuine and utterly unexpected. The bond means we're connected. What we build from that connection is entirely up to us. If you want friendship, I'll be your friend. If you want distance, I'll respect it. And if you want more. He stopped walking, turning to face her with an intensity that stole her breath. If you want more, he continued, his voice dropping to something low and heated, I will spend every day proving myself worthy of it. I've waited centuries for you, Aurora. I can wait a little longer for you to choose me. And standing there, in the morning light, with the scent of herbs surrounding them and the promise of vengeance and possibility stretching out ahead, Aurora felt the first crack form in the wall she'd built around her heart. Chapter 4, Blood, Bonds, and Beginnings. 3 months changed everything. 3 months of training, of learning, of pushing her body and mind past limits she hadn't known existed. 3 months of discovering what it meant to be a wolf, the enhanced senses, the supernatural strength, the connection to something primal and powerful that lived beneath her skin. Her transition had happened on a full moon, just as Jade had predicted, and when Aurora had opened her eyes in her wolf form for the first time, she'd understood everything her parents must have felt. The freedom. The fierce, wild joy of running through the forest with the pack at her heels and the moon singing in her blood. 3 months of learning about the Silver Dawn, their structure, their leaders, their weaknesses. Mia and Jade had redeemed themselves 100 times over, providing intelligence and training and the unwavering support Aurora hadn't realized she needed until it was offered. The pack had accepted her, too, not as an outsider but as one of them. As their queen-in-waiting, though Aurora still bristled at the title. And 3 months of Eric. Eric, who trained with her every dawn, matching her form with his own until she could hold her own against wolves twice her size. Eric, who answered her endless questions with patience and occasional exasperation. Eric, who looked at her like she was something precious even when she was sweaty and exhausted and covered in the mud of the training grounds. Eric, who never pushed. Never demanded. Simply existed beside her, steady and solid and waiting for her to decide what she wanted. She knew now. Had known for weeks, really, though admitting it felt like jumping off a cliff. You're distracted. His voice cut through her thoughts, and Aurora blinked, realizing she'd completely lost track of the strategy meeting happening around her. The pack's war council was assembled in the lodge's great hall, a dozen of Eric's most trusted advisors, including Mia in her newly official role as intelligence coordinator. Sorry, Aurora said, pulling her focus back. You were saying? Eric's lips twitched with suppressed amusement. I was saying that our scouts have finally located the Silver Dawn's primary base. An old military installation about 200 miles south. They've been operating there for at least a decade. Aurora's heart rate spiked. This was it. This was what they'd been working toward. When do we move? Tomorrow night. Full moon. Our wolves will be at peak strength, and their security will be at its weakest. They never expect attacks during full moons because they believe we're too busy with pack traditions. Eric's smile was sharp, predatory. They underestimate how very much I want to see them pay for what they've done. The meeting continued, logistics, team assignments, contingency plans. Aurora contributed where she could, but her mind kept drifting to what was coming. Tomorrow night, she would face the people who had murdered her parents. Tomorrow night, she would finally have justice. After the meeting ended and the council dispersed, Eric caught her arm. Walk with me. It wasn't a question, but it wasn't quite a command either. It was something in between, an invitation with the weight of importance behind it. They walked in silence through the compound, past the training grounds where Aurora had bled and sweated and transformed, past the garden where she'd first let herself cry in front of him, until they reached a cliff overlooking a valley she'd never seen before. The view was staggering. Miles of forest stretched below, painted in the gold and crimson of autumn leaves, with a river winding through like a ribbon of silver. The setting sun turned everything to fire. This is where I come when I need to remember why I do this, Eric said quietly. When the weight of being alpha feels too heavy, when the losses seem too great. I come here and look at what we're protecting. What we're fighting for. Aurora stood beside him, feeling the warmth of his body close to hers. It's beautiful. You're beautiful. She turned, startled by the raw sincerity in his voice. He was watching her with those golden eyes, and for once, all his defenses were down. This wasn't the Alpha King. This was just Eric, the man who had waited centuries for her. The man who had never once made her feel anything but cherished. Tomorrow might change everything, he continued. We could win, and the Silver Dawn will finally be broken. We could lose, and, well. I don't want to think about that option. Then don't. But before we go into battle, I need you to know something. He took her hands, and his were trembling slightly, the first sign of nerves she'd ever seen from him. These 3 months with you have been the best of my very long life. Watching you grow, watching you fight, watching you become who you were always meant to be. It's been a privilege I don't deserve. Eric. Let me finish. Please. He took a breath. I love you. I don't say that because the bond demands it or because my wolf chose you. I say it because I, Eric Blackthorne, the man beneath the Alpha, have fallen completely and irrevocably in love with you. And whatever happens tomorrow, I needed you to know that. Aurora felt tears prick her eyes, not sad tears this time, but something brighter. Something that felt like joy. I love you too, she said, and watched his face transform with a hope so raw it made her chest ache. I tried not to. I told myself it was too fast, too strange, too much. But you made it impossible not to love you. Every day, every moment, every stupid joke you make when you think no one's listening. He kissed her. Not like that first kiss in the bar, stolen and startling. This was deliberate. This was claiming and being claimed. This was a promise made flesh. When they finally broke apart, Aurora was breathless, clinging to his jacket like he might disappear if she let go. We're going to survive tomorrow, he said against her lips. And when we do, I'm going to spend the rest of my considerable lifespan making you happy. That's a lot of pressure. I'm an overachiever. He grinned, and it was real now, joyful and bright and nothing like the scary stranger she'd kissed in a bar 3 months ago. Now come. We should rest. Tomorrow, we hunt. The military installation was everything the scouts had promised and more. High fences topped with razor wire, guard towers at every corner, and enough armed humans to make even the most confident wolf nervous. Aurora crouched in the tree line with Eric and their assault team, watching the compound through eyes that could now see in the dark as clearly as day. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, eager for justice. Remember the plan, Eric murmured, his breath warm against her ear. Team Alpha takes the main gate, Team Beta disables their communications, and you. Find Marcus Kane, Aurora finished. The leader of the Silver Dawn. The man who had personally ordered her parents' execution. I remember. And when you find him? I make him pay. Eric's hand found hers, squeezed once. I'll be right behind you. Always. The signal went up, a howl that echoed through the night, and chaos erupted. The battle was brutal. The Silver Dawn had expected complacency, not an organized assault. Wolves poured over the fences, taking down guards before they could even raise their weapons. Aurora moved through the compound like a ghost, her training guiding her past defenders and through corridors, deeper and deeper into the installation. She found Marcus Kane in a command center, surrounded by screens showing the battle outside. He was older than she'd expected, with gray hair and cold eyes and a face that showed no remorse for anything he'd done. So, he said, not even surprised by her appearance, the Thompson girl finally came for revenge. I wondered when you'd find your way here. You killed my parents. I've killed many wolves. Your parents were merely the ones who screamed the loudest. He smiled, actually smiled. They begged for your life, you know. Told us you didn't know anything, that you were innocent. As if any of your kind could ever be innocent. Rage, white-hot and blinding, surged through Aurora. But she held it. Controlled it. Let it fuel her rather than consume her. You're wrong about us, she said, walking slowly toward him. We're not monsters. We're people who love and grieve and hope, just like anyone else. My parents wanted peace. They believed in a future where we could coexist. And you murdered them for it. And I'd do it again. He pulled a gun. Silver bullets, Aurora knew. The only thing that could reliably kill a wolf. Your kind is a plague. An abomination. And I've dedicated my life to cleansing this world of. He never finished. Aurora moved faster than human eyes could follow, crossing the distance between them in a heartbeat. The gun fired, but she was already past the bullet, her claws extended, her wolf fully in control. It was over in seconds. Marcus Kane fell, and with him, the leader of the Silver Dawn. Aurora stood over his body, breathing hard, waiting for the satisfaction she'd expected to feel. Instead, there was only quiet. An emptiness where her rage had lived. And then Eric was there, pulling her into his arms, holding her as she shook. It's done, he murmured into her hair. It's over. You're okay. I don't feel okay. You will. Eventually. He tilted her chin up, making her meet his eyes. What you're feeling is normal. Justice isn't the same as closure. But the closure will come. And I'll be here for every step of it. She believed him. After everything, after the lies and the revelations and the blood, she believed him. The epilogue came 2 weeks later, when the pack gathered under a full moon to celebrate their victory and their future. Aurora stood on the lodge's grand balcony, wearing a white dress that Mia had insisted was traditional for Luna ceremonies and that Jade had admitted was also really hot. Eric stood beside her, resplendent in black, looking at her like she was his entire universe. Below, the pack waited, her pack now, their faces upturned and expectant. Ready? Eric asked. Not even a little. She smiled anyway. Let's do this. The ceremony was ancient and beautiful, words spoken in a language older than the lodge itself. When Eric marked her as his Luna, a bite on her shoulder that healed almost instantly, Aurora felt the pack bond slam into her like a wave. Hundreds of wolves, connected to her, sharing their joy and their love. And through it all, Eric's voice in her mind, warm and certain, my mate. My queen. My Aurora. Later, when the celebrations had died down and they stood alone on that clifftop overlooking the valley, Aurora thought about everything that had led her here. A dare in a bar. A kiss that changed everything. A world she'd never known existed opening up to embrace her. Regrets? Eric asked, reading her expression. Not a single one. She leaned into him, feeling his arms wrap around her. I still can't believe this started because I kissed a stranger on a dare. Technically, you kissed the Alpha King on a dare. Important distinction. Oh, is it? Absolutely. Much more impressive on your resume. She laughed, and he caught the sound with a kiss, soft and sweet and full of promise. I love you, she said when they parted. I love you too. He grinned. And I'm very glad you're stubborn enough to kiss scary strangers in bars. It worked out quite well for me. For both of us, Aurora corrected. Below them, the pack howled, their voices rising to the moon. And Aurora, who had once been a lonely human eating cold pizza on her birthday, howled with them. She was home. The end. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.